Hi, Rich from Mustangs To Fear. Today with my wife Michelle and we're going to show you how to install our one-piece upper nose, and we're going to show you how to install the lower valance also. So one of the first things we want to show you is make sure that your alignment of your sheet metal is right. This can vary quite a bit. What you want to look for is make sure your gap is the same. You don't want it tight here and wide here and the exact opposite on the other side. That's going to tell you that your front end is shifted one way or the other. So these gaps should be even from front to back. So even if you have your measurements in the front right here, which is critical, you can still have your whole front end completely off one way or the other. So it's very important that everything is square. Now when we do 65/6s, we're normally at 45 3/8. You'll notice I wrote that down right here. Now those measurements are off using a Ford steel hood. So it's an OEM hood, OEM sheet metal on this car. Everything that we make in our fiberglass is with OEM. Now when you get into aftermarket parts, aftermarket fenders, radiator supports, everything can change. There's times where we'll have to bust spot wells loose because they just absolutely won't fit. So it's hard to make anything that's going to fit everything perfectly. So you have to have a certain amount of skill level, no matter what you're doing, to put these parts on. Now if you got OE, then you're ahead of the game. So anyways, what we start off with is between this measurement here and here on the very outer edge, we're at 45 3/8. Now this nose was made with 3 original OEM pieces, and we bonded them in all as one unit. Now when you take it out, you really can't pull it straight out. It has to come out at an angle. So that's where people get in trouble with this, thinking that this should just slide in all together at one shot. So if you'll grab that end, if we were just to put this up like this, you're going to look at this and say, well, this ain't sticking out, 3/4 of an inch. Well, it's made to flex. So how we do it is we take one side at a time. See how that'll flex right in there? It's not going to crack. It's not going to break on you. So she's going to hold that. I'm going to put a couple bolts in there just to get it going here. Just like that. And we'll come over here to the other side. Now see how that's kind of sticking out, but it's really not in a bind. I mean, it looks like it's a mile off, but it's not. See how that just drew down? Now, the tolerances we have on these things are very tight. Even when you're using the OE buckets, they were tight. So, thing about fiberglass, this is hand-laid fiberglass. So if it's thicker in one area than the other, then you need to sand the backside down and get this as, about as thin as you can get, and you might have to sand the inside edge where it slides into the fender. The other thing is, you've got 2 bolts that goes into the fender. Leave those things loose. Don't bother trying to get those in there because the fenders, they need to flex a little bit. So if you've got that in there, that's going to keep those fenders from going out. And that's pretty much about it on that part. Now, one other thing we like to do on these, Ford never did have a good fit on headlight doors. They were always crooked and cockeyed, but if you look how this is fitting right here, this, like I say, this is an OE fender, this is an OE headlight door. Now this has been blended. If you look at this, you'll see it's a little thicker here at the top than it normally would be around the side. So we can see there's just a slight amount of blend right there. So normally what I do on these is, once this bucket's on there like that, I'll take some 2-inch tape, a couple, 2 or 3 layers, and I'll go all the way around. I won't go right now, but I'll go all the way around this thing. And then I'm going to fasten my headlight door. Now, before you start blending this, these things will flex enough. You can take a hammer and dolly and bring this edge up to cheat just a little bit more, and you'll have less filler. So then once this is put on like that, I'm going to fasten it on with the screws. Then I'm going to take a coat of filler, and I'm going to spread it across the top. And that'll give me pretty much even, and then I'm going to sand that down. Then when I'm ready to finish it off, then this tape is going to come off to do a final blend, and then I'll use fishing line. I like to use a 50-pound, strong enough to reel in probably a 500-pound tuna, so I just want to make sure that my line doesn't break when I'm pulling it through my body filler. You can go with a lighter line. You can go from 12-pound, 18-pound. I just normally use 50-pound. Take a little bit of small pieces of tape, and what I do is I put this on the very edge. So make sure you have enough to pull. Don't ever cut this thing short. You got to have enough to pull. And I'm going to put this tape right on the very edge down here, just like that. And I'm going to put small pieces all the way around this. Then I'm going to put the headlight door back on. And I'm going to put my body filler on both panels at the same time. Then when I do that, I'll just spread that across like that. I'm going to wait for that filler to kick, and then when it does kick, then I'll just pull this fishing line right through. Leave the headlight door on. Now I'm ready to sand this, and I'll have a perfect transition right there. They'll be both perfectly flat. The other trick is afterwards is take a slight chamfer, just a slight chamfer on the edge of this and a slight chamfer on the edge of that, so that when you do bolt these two together after the car's painted, you'll have just a minimal gap in there and it's not going to fracture the paint. Now, there is a couple other things that we do. Let me take this nose back off. Get that out of the way. Ford fenders on 65.6s are notorious for cracking in here. They're absolutely terrible. And the worst thing you can have is a car completely painted and then find that crack. Now see how that's all split right there? And you can take a look at the other side here, and it probably shows up even more. See how that's actually got filler in there. Normally there's a V gap in there, and that's why they split out. So what I normally do is take a piece of L-shaped bracket that I'll make, and I'll drill like a 1/4-inch hole right here, and this will come up from the back side because there's a hole up in there. I'll slip that up from the back side, and then I'll plug weld this here, and then this will come clear up here actually to the front, but it's going to be on the back side. And then you'll have solid metal in there, and that fender will never crack on you. It's about the same thing as the bottom. If you look down here at the bottom, Ford is just really bad about having these fenders crack. If you look at this real close, you'll see that's already split. See how that's split right there? And you can pull these fenders out, shoot 1/2, 3/4 of an inch. So that's going to make a difference on how we're going to install this lower valance. And we're going to show you that. But what I do is I make a patch panel. What Ford should have done in the first place, I bring this out where the fender actually needs to be. And then I'm going to weld this here and weld it there, and then I'll weld it on the back side. That fender will never flex. So once I've done that, and I've got it fitting pretty nice, then I'm ready to set my lower valance up. And that's what we're going to do next. We're going to show you the lower valance. Okay, now moving along to the lower valance that we designed. This is with the upper stone shield and the lower valance both combined as one unit. Those were two separate units from Ford. Of course, we changed the lights. Those are 2010, 2014 lights, side markers and driving lights. We changed the opening in here. A couple things is sometimes this edge might need to be trimmed back a little bit. If you look at one that has been trimmed, it's going to depend on the application. You can see how this has been trimmed back. And that's because of either intercoolers or AC condensers or whatever. So that may be necessary to trim that back per your application. The other thing we found after installing a few of these is that the brackets on the sides will be bonded in when you get it. And the brackets for the lights, the mounting lights, will be included and bonded in. But what we found is what we're going to leave these out. These 5 brackets out. And it's a lot easier if you take those brackets and put them back into the factory location and mount them on there. That way you have enough adjustment, and if you have to trim this back, if you have to trim this edge back, you can. So if you grab that edge right there, I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about. The other thing we did when we designed this nose is we extended this lip on the bottom of the upper bucket. Ford had a big gap in there, probably 1/2, 3/4 inch. It was pretty ugly. So we designed this to come down to where it actually touches that, and you don't have there's no gap in there whatsoever. But when you're putting this nose on, you might have to trim a little bit of this back, depending on how this is going to fit in right in here off your rear support and your fenders. But this is where it comes in handy to have these brackets already on there. And then once you get those lined up where you want them, then you can run the structural adhesive on top of the bracket. It's already bolted to the rear support, but you can run the structural adhesive on and then slip it back up there and then glue them. And it works out a lot. Plus it allows you, like I say, if you have to trim that, it's a lot easier to trim that fiberglass without having this bracket already in place, which is going to hinder you from doing that. Now, we're going to kind of show you how the sides of these fit. This was all made basically off of this car, so this is all OE sheet metal. If you come around here and look to the side, now they're designed to come clear out here to the edge, okay? That's where they should be. But you can see how the fender, see the edge right there? Well, that's in the fender itself. So that's when we put the brace in there to pull this thing out and get that shape the way it should be. See, that still has a little bit of a hump, but that's because that needs to be dollied out. So that's why it's important to get that other brace that I was showing you and weld that back in there and give you a lot of strength. Now, the other thing Ford has always done, and I never cared for, is that these always will take a V notch in. This part will go in and this part will go in, and those always, to me, they looked ugly. So when we do them, this is completely flush. We'll run a coat of mud all the way down. Same trick with the fishing line. Get the fishing line taped in there, and then you run your filler all the way across until this is completely straight, like a straight edge, and then pull that fishing line through there, and then you can work this and it's completely smooth. Now, we also pack the back side of these, so it's the same as we do a quarter extension or anything else. These will be packed with filler, so this will be completely smooth across here. And we do that because it'll give you a nice flat mating surface when it touches up to your fender. This is what it looks like when they're actually blended. So that's pretty much what that's going to look like. That'll be completely filled across there. And then this part here is already out. I guess we could probably try it and see how it fits on this one. This nose wasn't blended on this car. It was blended on this other car over here. And we'll set that right back up there. And it's basically, it's out a little bit further because it has been blended, because this part of the fender right here needs to be built out. But that's why it's also critical to make sure you leave those bolts loose, because you want to be able to move this fender in and out to get your adjustment. And the other thing I didn't mention was on the upper nose. Normally what I do on those is I drill the fiberglass from the back side. We initially started to put a dimple in there, but we found that they could be off. They could be off quite a bit from one fender to another. And in some instances, this is where you might have to take and bust the spot welds on that fender to get this thing to line up where it needs to be. So once I get the bucket in there, I go on the back side and I can see where the anchor is, and I just drill a small 1/8 inch hole through these, take it out, open it up to 1/4, and then I'm good to go. So hopefully that helps, and if you got any questions or anything, feel free to call us at any time, and we'll be happy to answer all your questions. Thanks for watching.